Hello guys, and welcome back to Joe's Ventures, and today we're doing part 67 of our Jurassic World Evolution 2 mod spotlights. We'll take a look and see some of the wonderful mods people have been making and use them to talk about their real life fossil counterparts and all that. So I'm going to kind of mess it up a little bit, that's alright, but we've got a very interesting assortment today. We've got a lot of cool dinosaurs, a lot of returning, we've got a new modder as well. So quite excited to get stuck into a few of these really wonderful mods. So we're going to be starting off today. I've already kind of covered this mod before. This is Gushy Gore's Tacosaurus, but they actually updated it and added a new variant. So the original one was Tacosaurus Spa. That's the one that's still in the game. It's got all the accurate colors. It's based off that really nice fossil that we get the colors and the quills as well. But this is actually a bigger species, so we'll get into this one. So this is Tacosaurus civicus. So as I mentioned, this is Tacosaurus. So just quickly before I go into the particular species, Tacosaurus means parrot lizard, and it's an early genus of ceratopsian dinosaur that lived in Asia between 126 to 101 million years ago, and is actually notable for being the most species-rich non-avian dinosaur genus. So there's about 12 different species of Tacosaurus described, and as I mentioned, there's more specimens that haven't been described. There is arguments for adding different genera, but that's kind of what we know at the moment. So all of them were at least obligate bipeds as adulthood, and you can see one of the main defining features is that really high skull and that big beak that kind of looks like, of course, parrot beak. And they're also famous for having these long filaments. The well-preserved specimen has that filaments, and very similar to a species like Long. And based on some research on the behavior they had, may have had some complex behaviors and may have been active for short times during the day and night and had well-developed sense of smell and vision. So as I mentioned, one of the earliest ceratopsians, closer to Tyrannosaurus though than, not Tyrannosaurus, Triceratops and Yalong, and it had its own family where it was like this own group of really early, an early offshoot pretty much of the ceratopsians before they got really big and got all their horns, which is really interesting as well. And Tacosaurus itself was actually a really well-known dinosaur. We have lots and lots of specimens, so we know a lot about how they grew up. We have lots of hatchlings and their reproductive biology, and quite abundant, so it's really awesome that we have all that. So the species that we have here today is Civicus. However you say that, let me find it there, or Cerbiacus, so you say that. So this guy was first found in the 1950s. Russian paleontologists were actually excavating Tacosaur remains near a village in Siberia called Stishalovsky, which is interesting. Lovazor, as if you say that. And there was two other localities in the 1990s that actually produced quite a few specimens of these guys. And then the species Sibiricus was actually described in 2000 by Russian paleontologists and was officially given the credit to the name given to the authors. And the remains were not completely described until 2006, but it was found to be two nearly complete skeletons and various dislocated material from other individuals, so it's quite well known, of all ages, so we pretty good growth series. Known from the Izek Formation in Siberia, which ranges from the Aptian to Abian stages of the early Cretaceous, so it's quite an early animal. And was quite big. I believe it's actually one of the bigger ones. It got to about 2.5 meters long. I think that is, I believe, the biggest one. Some like the next one we'll talk about Mongoliensis is that one. But yeah, a really cool species. So yeah, so the biggest one's got about the best known species Mongoliensis, which is next, has actually got about 2 meters. Civicus was significantly larger, so about 2.5 meters is a good one. And there's the main way you can tell a lot of the species apart is the skull. The main way you can tell Civicus apart, it's got this very tall skull, also being a larger size, on all these little spikes coming around like that. So that's the main way you can tell Civicus apart. Big brow horns and big nasal horn, big jugal horns as well. So it's probably the most charismatic of them all. And we know it's a herbivore. We know a lot about its growth rates as well, and the babies were born precocial, so they were born pretty much ready to go right out of the egg. So yeah, really cool animal. So yeah, there's a lot we could talk about Tacosaurus, but I want to focus more on just the species, because I've already kind of gone through with the SPA, and that's the one that we talked about. So that's Civicus, really cool. The biggest of all the Tacosaurus species. Really, really cool. So next up, we'll be looking at the other species. This is Mongoliensis. And I think I should first point out it actually doesn't look that much like Mongoliensis. It should have a bit more of a jugal coming out, much more than that, and a little bit more rounded face. I think with some edits could make it look nice though. But this is Mongoliensis, I mean. So Mongoliensis was the first one to be described and is the best known. So it was first described in 1923 by Harry Fairfield Osborne, and was named as the type species P. mongoliensis is after the being found in Mongolia, and was part of the new family Psittacosauridae. So remains of the dinosaur first discovered the year before, and on a third expedition from the American Museum of Natural History into Mongolia at the time, they found this type specimen, which was a nearly complete skull, and is quite well known. And this same expedition actually found a lot of really famous dinosaurs throughout history, including Protoceratops, Oviraptor, and Velociraptor. And it was actually quite a big effort, like contributions from a lot of countries, like Americans, Mongolians, Russians, Chinese, Polish, Canadians, and Japanese. So a lot of them paleontologists kind of all came around together. And in areas where they found to be around the early Aptian to Avian stage, about 125 to 100 million years ago. And fossils of over 75 individuals have been recovered and nearly 20 complete skulls. So we have a pretty good idea what this guy looked like. And individuals of all ages have been found. So hatchlings less than 13 centimeters long, or about 5 inches long, have been found to very old adults. And we actually have a lot of, as I mentioned, we have so much specimens. We have one that was actually attacked by a Rhippedomymus and may have killed it, which is like a small, not small, it's quite a big for Mesozoic mammal standards. That's quite interesting. So yeah, herbivores, the growth rate, they probably didn't grow too fast. So they estimated it's been 3 years old, at least a kilogram, so they kind of grew a little bit slower. They grew relatively rapid growth compared to most reptiles and marsupials, but there was slower growth than like placental mammals like you and I and modern birds, which is interesting as well. And yeah, I think that covers all that. Really, really cool. Gushy Gore really did a wonderful job with the Psittacosaurus. I think this one could use a bit of an update just to better fit the actual anatomy of Mongoliensis. But the Cibicus is like Sibericus is actually like perfect. I love it. And you get to see a little bit bigger as well. It looks so nice. It's really done a wonderful job. And it's a cool species as well. It's just a really interesting looking animal. I'm definitely a big fan of the Cibicus. I love it. I love it. So we're gonna let you run off and do your thing. Make sure you get away from the hatchery so I can hatch more things. I know what these dinosaurs can be like sometimes. So next up, we're having a look. This one is done by Netraptor and Castle Log, or Castle Cog, however you say that. We've got Iguana Colossus. Well, and it does it again. Alright, I'll have a look at you. I'll have a look at you, because you look like the nicest one. So this is Iguana Colossus. So Iguana Colossus, which means colossal iguana or Iguana Colossus, is a genus of iguanodontians, related to iguanodon, lived in North America during the early Cretaceous period. And there is known from one holotype and a partial skeleton of a single individual. So the holotype itself was discovered by Donald D. Belux in 2005, unearthed in the yellow cat member, and we'll get to why that's important. And it dates to the Venorian stage of the early Cretaceous, but then it wasn't named and described until 2010 by a bunch of paleontologists, including James O. Kirkland and a lot of very famous paleontologists, along with the genus Hippodraco that was from the Cedar Mountain Formation. The single individual that's been assigned to it is actually quite complete. Some skull elements, a maxilla, squamosal, along with like ribs and issue puba. So it is a pretty decent one. And the genus name, or the generic name, Iguana Colossus, just means colossal iguana, pretty much. And that's because it looks like an iguana. Its teeth look like an iguana's, so iguanodon, very similar to why iguanodon got its name. And a very big animal, as we'll get into. And then Forticus is its species name, and that means mighty, so its name means the mighty Iguana Colossus, which is pretty cool. And there have been some findings that could be potentially a juvenile material of Iguana Colossus, but it hasn't been really given a good look yet. But these guys were quite big, a very big, robust iguanodontid. Reached probably about 9 meters or about 30 feet long and weighed about 5 tons. And quite stocky, and based on comparisons as well, it may have had a crown very similar to a lot of other earlier kind of in its teeth, very similar to earlier iguanodontians. So very big, very, very cool animal. And Iguana Colossus, as I mentioned, is part of that group Iguanodontia. So it is closely related to things like a Diprotodon and Dinosaurs, a kind of a later relative of it's kind of a later relative leading into the Hadrosauriformes, so it is a little bit later in time. And as I mentioned, we're going to talk about its ecology. So Iguana Colossus itself is found from the yellow cat member. However, it's divided into the upper and lower cat member, and Iguana Colossus actually shared its environment with like Falcurius, which is an Dinosaur, Marinosaurus, which is sauropod, a few other really cool animals. And the other paleofauna that's known from the upper helicat member is like Cedosaurus and Moabosaurus, which are both sauropods, Hippodraco, which has been described as well, and Cedoretes. Utah Raptor as well, and Gastonia are all famous from that as well. Another theropod Marshiraptor, which is pretty interesting. And yeah, there's a few other fossils, like another one, there's an undescribed kind of sailback iguanodontid, things like that, which is a little bit sad. I mean, a little bit cool. That they're not. It's cool, but they're sad that it's not described yet. But yeah, really, really awesome. Really nice mod. I love seeing some like the underrated species getting some love. It looks really nice. I just love like the pattern, especially on this one. It just looks so nice. We do love our iguanodontians here. Really, really cool. So we're gonna let you run off and do your thing. So next up after that, we have got not. I'm not going to talk about Guanlong all over again because I've already covered that recently. But we have got Hasquat Tree actually in Game Videos for Life actually went back and did some cosmetic changes for it, and that includes the two male and females from Dinosaur Revolution. And Dinosaur Revolution is one of those documentaries. It's kind of middle of the road in terms of documentaries, but it's got some iconic designs, and one of the first ones to really put dinosaurs having feathers really prominently in their marketing and everything. So let's have a look. So we're going to have a look at I believe this is the male. Or about the female. So you can see, I believe this is the female. Yeah, this is the female. So this is very much got a cassowary design to it. You can see the classic colors of the cassowary. And I really like how they've done the casque as well. It fits perfectly, I think. So to quickly talk about physical characteristics, which are about 3 meters long and found to live a bit in the Century Formation about 160 million years ago, is an early relative of T-Rex, so they're separated by about 90 million years. More than you and I are actually separated from Tyrannosaurus. That shows how long that lineage is. One of their also more famous features is this crest here that seems to be quite hollow. We do have a subadult and adult specimen, so we kind of think that this may be like a cast and used for like sexual displays or something like that. And it's very similar to like Dilong, is really similar as well. And one thing that's not really represented in this design, and very likely that this guy had feathers, and the original show they had feathers as well, but I don't think they've just been able to put, Haswatri wasn't able to put them in for the design. But regardless, still looks really, really nice. I love how they've done the patterning and everything. Really, it's very much inspired, as you can see, by cassowaries, and definitely a big fan. And this is the female, as I mentioned. I'm not sure if it's specified in the show which one's male and female. I think it would actually make more sense that the bigger one, which will be next, should be female, because of most birds, the females are bigger. But the males could be probably more drab and colourful like this guy. So it might be the wrong way round, but it really doesn't matter either way. But in this episode, the episode they're in is called Survival Tactics. And they seem to be chasing little mammals. So the idea of that segment was showing off all the little mammals that lived with the dinosaurs, and there was Volatherium, which was like a extinct version of like a flying, like a sugar glider or a flying squirrel, something like that. And then they kind of chase it around during the episode, and then they end up on the back of a large Mamenchisaur that was sitting in the lake, and then it's unknown if. And then basically what happened is they're left in the lake. and then there's a few crocodiles ready to attack them. But it's not known whether they survive or not. It's kind of probably meant to be a little bit more of a funny story. But it's a really nice design. Really do like the bright colors, and the cast has come out really well. Definitely really, really nice. So that one is based more off cassowaries. But the next one, this is the male. So this is the male one from the show, and you can see this one's based a lot more, reminds me a lot more of like Andean condors and just condors in general. Let's see. So you can see a lot bulkier. So you can see there is already some sexual dimorphism in here. So you can see in this, I'll go from what the cosmetic says. This is the female. Female's much more lithe and a lot more dainty, and these guys are much bulkier with more rounded crest and a lot more like skin around its face. A lot more pinkish as well, while the female is a lot more reddish and blue. These guys are much more pink. Which is still quite cool. I really like the contrast. It really gives them, like, especially in the show, it gives them like a sense of character, which is quite cool. And they've all got a bit of a wattle as well. I like the little wattle touch. Yeah, pretty good. I'm definitely a big fan. The only thing I would change really is bringing like the feathers on. That was the only thing I'd really change, because we're pretty sure that Guanlong had feathers and Dilong as well. And that means it's likely, because they're early relative to T-Rex, very likely that T-Rex's ancestors had feathers, and then that leads to the whole T-Rex having feathers thing. But yeah, the consensus on that is that at least ancestrally it did, and if it most likely had feathers like that, it would have been very sparse, kind of like elephant hair, or potentially in just small areas of the body that haven't been preserved in terms of like fossil skins and things like that, fossil scales. So yeah, it's a little bit of a debate, but it's still likely that they had feathers to some extent. Yeah, really, really cool. Definitely love these guys. So that was done by Pasquak Tree and Game Videos for Life. So did a great job all with these guys. So next up, we are going to look at another one. So this next one was done by Michael Primeval and Just That, I think. Michael Productions or something like that. We have got Caprasuchus. I forgot to close it. Oh, we won't worry about that. So, one thing that's a little bit annoying as well is something with the Nothosaurus has caused it to pretty much like not be able to be made a new species. It's hard to mod. So it's been an issue with our everyone. So this is just a replacement for the Nothosaurus. But we've got here Caprasuchus. Very, very cool animal. So Caprasuchus, they're an extinct genus of Mahungasaurid, Mahungasuchid, crocodiliform. So they're a crocodile. And it's only known from a single complete skull from the Esha Formation in Niger. And its name means boar croc. So Capros means boar in Greek. So the name means boar crocodile. And this is because you can see it's got very, very big, like almost canid-like teeth, which is very interesting. And that's where it kind of gets its name from. And it was first described, it was nicknamed boar croc by Paul Sereno and Hans Larsen, who described it in 2009, and lived with a lot of other crocodilians like Genetosaurus and Lagosuchus. Which is very interesting. There's a lot of crocodiles around that area at the time. So Caprasuchus is pretty much only known from that skull, and its skull is about 507 millimeters in length from the lower jaw and measures about 60 centimeters long. So it is a bigger animal. And they had these big tusk-like carcidiform teeth that kind of set it apart, and its dentition is very much unlike any other crocodilian. And it has the squamosal parietal bones that are quite similar. So these projections are quite similar to its relatives, such as Mahungasuchus. And the snout, as well as you can see, is generalized proportions and they're upwards. So it's believed that this could have been also the eye sockets are raised slightly then upwards. So they may have had potentially much more binocular vision compared to modern crocodilians. So that's as implied, potentially they could have had a more terrestrial ecology, so they wouldn't be swimming around so much. But obviously that's not the interpretation they went with here. And in terms of classification, it's a member of a family of crocodilians called Mahungasuchidae, which is along with Mahungasuchus from Madagascar. So they are joined together in their own group. And they seem to be a family of like Notosuchians, early Notosuchians as well, which are a really, really cool group of weird crocodilians. You get Sucho, Simosuchus, and things like that, which is quite cool. And in terms of paleobiology, it was first thought to be a little bit more of a terrestrial predator, and then evidence of the behavior was kind of the higher eyes, as I mentioned, which is unlike a lot of other modern crocodiles. And the orbits seem to be, which seems to be adaptation as well, and also being teeth and jaws being a lot more like carniform or very much like canines, was thought to be an argument to make it much more believed to be much more land adapted or terrestrial. And there was all these evidence come up, but however, it's now thought these guys were more semi-terrestrial, more typical of normal crocodilians, due as its relative Majungasuchus, I mean, which is also suggested to be a aquatic predator, very more typical crocodilian. And the specimens of both genera show adaptations that show they were definitely both adapted for being semi-aquatic, such as their tube-like snouts and the orbits located dorsally up at the top of the skull, and things like that. So very crocodilian in most regards. So it would have been potentially like the in-between. Like Cuban crocodiles can gallop and run on land. I could think Caprasuchus was potentially a little bit more of a landlubber than a lot of other crocodilians. It's not hard and fast. There's always a gradient with these things. So they could have been quite good runners and quite good swimmers at the same time. So yeah, really, really cool. So yeah, nice to see Caprasuchus. Definitely a big fan. Next up, this is by Trippy28. We've got another aquatic one. Very, very cool. We have got a Rhinosaurus. So a Rhinosaurus in Latin, it means well-nosed lizard. So it got its name because it's got quite a big nose, or it's well-nosed. It's an extinct genus of ichthyosaurs, as you can see, from the early Jurassic. It comes from about 83 to 75 million years ago. So its fossils have been found around Western Europe, in like Germany and England, also in Spain and Switzerland as well. And it seemed to have been quite a well-adapted pelagic or deep-sea or open ocean ichthyosaur. It was quite actually a large animal, got about 7 meters in length. So what really makes it weird is that it's followed, like, looks like a normal ichthyosaur until you look at its mouth. They have a very fish-like body, but unlike other ichthyosaurs, oh, that's not right. So you can see they've got that really, really long upper jaw compared to that lower jaw. I just read the Wikipedia that said, unlike other ichthyosaurs, did not have gills. And you just like reading, all the ichthyosaurs don't have gills. That's probably a little bit of a wiki error. But anyway, the main thing that makes a Rhinosaurus distinct and kind of gives it its name, it's got its top jaw very much longer than its bottom jaw. And it's very similar to things like sailfish, and it's believed they have a similar ecology. So we'll get into that. So it was originally named Ichthyosaurus longirongus, or longrostris. And then it was just published by Mantell in 1851. And then it was first described, the first skull was described in 1856, and then the genus itself was erected in 1909. And the paper is also describing Pleistocene cetacean era Delphus contexti, which is very interesting as well. And in 2002, there was another species described from Germany, and the original species is considered dubious because of that poor preservation. And the Alhuia is actually kind of resurrected to replace it. So there's a new type species for it. So as I mentioned, these guys are kind of a large-bodied ichthyosaur. So long-tailed, slender. They're believed to have upper jaw being extremely long, but there's also cheek much shorter. So they have extreme overbite, very similar to modern sawfish and marlin. And they got to about 6 or 7 meters long, so quite a big animal. And in terms of its teeth, it had elongated, slender and straight teeth without very much ornamentation. And like most post-terractic ichthyosaurs, it actually would have had pet foramen, which is very interesting as well. Very big eyes as well, typical of other ichthyosaurs to be able to see. And very interesting. So in terms of its relations, it's in a group of ichthyosaurs called Lepidopteridae, so it is related to things like Lepidopterus and Excalibursaurus. But its more famous relative is a little bit more distinct, is near Ichthyosauria, which is Tyrannosaurus. It's very interesting as well. So in terms of its diet, so because it looks so similar to marlin and swordfish, they believe they have a very similar ecology. So they seem these guys, that also the morphology as well suggests they would have been very fast swimmers and very slower and more flexible predators. So that for the extreme overbite, they believe to have used a strategy very close to what swordfish use today. So they also have those elongated teeth at the front there. You can see under the jaw, they've got those teeth there. They would have used that to potentially attack prey with their penetrate through, make damage to them in the soft prey. So they would have very much fed on small fish, oysters, squids, very delicate prey. They're just animals small enough, really. So what they would have done is probably gone to swim really fast and use their teeth and their nose to kind of damage it and then eat it up. And like other ichthyosaurs, these guys are very high-speed swimmers. So they were very able to swim quite fast. And the neural spines of the fluke vertebrae was short and very erect, and this suggests they would have actually been quite good at steering and propulsion at very low speeds. And they're very swimming turgiform. So turgiform is very much similar to things like tuna, so very like squat body and don't use much of the tail, so they're really, really well adapted for swimming quite fast. And like other ichthyosaurs, they were actually probably deep divers, or able to dive quite deep. They had very large orbit with a caloric ring that allowed them to see in the dark, or potentially at night as well, and they did have very big eyes proportionally as well, so they would have been able to see in deep environments or at night. And other adaptations suggest that these guys would have lived in very deep or very open water, very pelagic species, which makes sense. Most marlins and swordfish today are very pelagic, so it makes sense for their ecology. So they lived in open ocean, very far away from the coastline, and they're not like other ichthyosaurs that show a distinct productivity. They seem to be very widespread across the world, as most pelagic species are. And they've been found, as I mentioned, around England to Germany, and limestone has been found in other places as well. And these guys may have been fed. They've been found with other ichthyosaurs and ammonites. And there's also evidence to show that they were a creature of marine environments, so they very much like those marine environments. And it makes sense with their ecology of them being very similar to marlin and swordfish being deep sea or open ocean animals. Makes a lot of sense. But yeah, really, really cool. Definitely love that mod. Tribu28 did a great job with this one. So we're going to let them swim off and do their thing. So next up, we've got the new guy. This is the new guy's mods. So this is called Fat Uncle Clyde Keen. Very, very interesting assortment of mods. So we're going to have a look at first the Onor Raptor. A very, very cool one. Let's have a look. And it does it again. It loves to do that, doesn't it? I'll have a look at you. You're like very pretty colors. So this is a completely custom model. Really done an awesome job with this one. Definitely a big fan. So this is Iguana Raptor. These guys were a medium-sized Megaraptoran theropod that came from the late Cretaceous of Argentina. It's known for some incomplete fossils, and includes parts of the skull, teeth, tail, vertebrae, and a partial tibia. And the specialized teeth actually resemble some Maniraptor forms that include Deinonychus and Compsognathids, which is very interesting as well. And that had led it to believe to be a Maniraptoran Silurisaur, so potentially something like, of course, Deinonychus, things like that. But now it's pretty much considered a Megaraptoran, and was found in the southern parts of Patagonia, and actually one of the most southernmost carnivorous dinosaurs known from South America. So it's named Ornithoraptor, which means tongue river thief, and it's derived from the Elancan Orcor, which is the local name of the La Leona River where it was found. And the species name honors Coleman Burke, which is Berkey, so that's the paleontologist that was supported the expedition and kind of found the fossils, Mr. Coleman Burke. So it was a medium-sized theropod compared to a lot of others, about 6 meters long and weighed about 500 kilograms. And the holotype consists of the postorbital and some teeth, the right tibia and fibia, and 3 incomplete chevrons, so very interesting as well. And as I mentioned, it was believed to be a Silurisaur due to the teeth being very similar to things like Maniraptorans and Compsognathids, things like that. However, it was deemed to be a bigger Raptoran, comparing to things such as Musaraptor and Aestodon. So those are both Megaraptorans, so they all are now concluded as Megaraptorans. That's where Ornithoraptor got its name. So Ornithoraptor was originally classified as Maniraptor Intercetus, and then it was Silurisaur, and then Megaraptor. And there has been some debate where Megaraptorans fit the dinosaur family tree. Some think they're more related to Allosauridia, so like the Carodontosaurs and Allosaurus, and then the Silurisauria, or Tyrannosauria, maybe sisters to Tyrannosaurus, which is interesting. But all known specimens of Ornithoraptor come from the Paraalki Formation, which is the middle section of the Armada Formation. And it was originally identified as coming from the Maastrichtian, And this would have been the youngest known Maniraptoran, though we do have Maip, which is from the Maastrichtian, and is quite big, they're just about 10 meters long. But now, recently, better dates suggest it comes from the Cenomanian Santonian, so just a little bit earlier. So it's believed to be dated to about 96 million years ago, where they're from. However, there have been sites been reinterpreted as I mentioned the Campanian. So yeah, really, really cool animal. Definitely a big fan, and a really nice mod as well. I believe Clyde, I'll just call you Clyde. Clyde did a really great job with this. I love the details. I think he did all custom model. Fits perfectly. Definitely a big fan. So let you run off and do your thing. Next up, we have got another one from Clyde, Fat Uncle Clyde. We have got Neovenator. Oh, and it does it again. Damn it. Alright, so here's Neovenator. This one looks nice too, definitely a big fan. So Neovenator, which means new hunter, they're a genus of Carcharodontosaurid theropod dinosaur that is known from several skeletons from the early Cretaceous of the Wessex Formation. So it's found in the Isle of Wight in southern England, and is actually one of the best known theropods of the early Cretaceous of Europe. So it's first described in 1978 as part of the granite chimestone in Brightstone Bay in the Isle of Wight, and these are believed to be dated to around the early Cretaceous, or the Barmians dated the early Cretaceous to about 125 million years ago. First collected by the Henwood family, and then shortly after, David Richards, who was a geology student, kind of sent the remains to the Isle of Wight, or no, Dinosaur Isle at the British Museum of Natural History, and then was described as this kind of own thing, with several amateur paleontologists kind of finding that out. And then there have been, in 1996, it was described as Neovenator saluri, which means new hunter, which neo meaning new, and venator means hunter, and saluri is actually the landowners where the fossils were found, which is pretty cool. And there's been a few specimens, like isolated teeth, things like that, so it is known from quite a few different parts. Very, very cool. In terms of description, it's about 7 meters long, so medium-sized theropod, and it was gracile, so weighed about a ton. Though there's one specimen that could be potentially 10 meters long, but those consists of a toe bone, and we're not even sure if it's Neovenator. It could be something completely different, but it's been tentatively referred to as Neovenator. There's been various kind of studies looking at its traits, but looking at its not going too deep into the skeleton, looks very typical of a medium-sized theropod. Very much, as I mentioned, Carcharodontosaurid, so you can see it's got the kind of more Carcharodontosaurid, like very long round face, the big claws, kind of leaner build, things like that. So it was originally described as an Allosaurid, so very more closely related to Allosaurus. And then it was described or suggested to be more closely related to Carcharodontosaurids, so things like Giganotosaurus, Megaraxes, things like that. And then it was actually suggested to be together with Megaraptorans, so things like, as I mentioned, Maip, Australovenator, they would have been in their own group. But then now it's kind of suggested they were back in their own group of Giganotosaurids. So it's very interesting, that taxonomy, because there is the argument that still that Megaraptorans are Carcharodontosaurid sisters too. But yeah, it's kind of neither here nor there. But we actually know quite a lot about this guy. It's quite well studied. There's been lots of study into their sensors. There's evidence of integumentary sensory organs, very similar to crocodiles, which are like pretty much like small dots on their scales that allow them to sense the environment. So they would have had a lot of those around their face. That probably would have been very useful for sensing things, but also kind of like sense the environment. Maybe they were sensitive to touch for communication, things like that, which is cool. And there have been some fossils found with like injuries and things like that, which is also cool. And in terms of a habitat that it lived in, the Isle of Wight is very famous for having a rich ecology. It's found in the Isle of Wight in England. It existed with a lot of very famous dinosaurs, such as Baryonyx, Polycanthus, Iguanodon, Eotyrannus, Brightstonius, Ceratosucops, Raphovenator, and those kind of animals living in those habitats as well. And there's also non-dinosaurs found in there, such as fishes, amphibians, lizards, pterosaurs, and lots of crocodilians as well. And it's very likely that Neovenator was kind of that top predator of the ecosystem. It was the lion or the tiger of that ecosystem. It preyed upon young iguanodons and potentially Polycanthus. And pretty much anything it could get its mouth around, really. Or Brightstonius as well, which was split from Iguanodon. Another really cool one. So yeah, let you run off and do your thing. So Fat Uncle Clyde, really great beginning to his modding career. I hope we get to see more mods from him, or them, hopefully. So next up, we've got a couple of JWE8 mods. So first up, we're going to have a look at Parasaurus. This is another cool one. Let's see that's how you doing. Oh, look at you. You like the green colors on you. You look, and you got a nice pose on you. So this is Parasaur, which means dense forest lizard. They're a genus of theropod dinosaur. They're the member of a balisaurid, so they're very close to like the Carnotaurus, things like that. And it's from the Upper Cretaceous, from the Campanian stage of Brazil, and pretty cool. So the type species, Parasaurus nevasi, was described by Keller and Kaptos in 2002, and the only specimen is found in sandstone found in the Mato Grosso Pablo Creek in Brazil, as I mentioned. And during 1952 to 1953, they visited the farm and collected several dinosaur bones. And the most important ones, as I mentioned, was the incomplete skeleton of a large balisaurid, and then some titanosaur bones. So that's where it was found. So Parasaurus, Picomenosaurus, we say that Nevasi, was named from the Greek word pyknos, which means dense, nemos, which means pastures, and saurus, so it's the dense pasture lizard or the dense forest lizard. And the naming was also an allusion to the Barbarossa state where it was found, since it was quite dense as forest as well. And then its scientific name was named after Dr. Lea Bastida Nevas, who passed away in 2002, which encouraged the pursuit of paleontology, particularly of Alexander Keller, which is quite cool. So what makes this guy distinct from like Carnotaurus and things like that? Thus far, it's been fragmentary, with no elements are well preserved, but we do have a good idea of some pubis, things like that. And it seems to be very similar, these outproductions are somewhat unlike other balisaurs, and seem to be a little bit more distinct. And estimated size actually put it as the largest member of a Balisauridae. So initial size estimates put it about 7 meters and 1.2 tons, but other estimates actually made it a lot bigger. So the biggest estimates for now is about 8.9 to 9 meters, so about like 30 feet long and about 3.6 tons. So it makes it the largest member of a Balisauridae, which is quite interesting. And the following cratergram, it's more closely related to things like Venor and Leucocan. I've covered those before. A lot of other South American balisaurids. And then a little bit later is things like a Balisaurus and Carnotaurus and things like that. So yeah, a really, really cool animal. Definitely a big fan. So that was by JWE8. Did a great job. So next up, last but certainly not least, we've got another returning mod. This is one we cover again. We've just covered Zing Tyrannosaurus, but now JWE8 has kind of thrown the hat in the ring and done under the Zing Tyrannosaurus. So let's have a look at this guy. Have a look at. Who should we have a look at? I'll have a look at you since you're in the nice light. This is a really nice mod. I'm actually quite a big fan of this. So JWE8 did a wonderful job. So this is Zing Tyrannosaurus. So this is a genus of Tyrannosaurid theropod, kind of one of the big three that lived in the Campanian stage of the late Cretaceous in China. And it's a member of the subfamily Tyrannosaurine, which is Tacosaurus and Tyrannosaurus. And it has the name Zing Tyrannosaurus magnus. So it was first described by David Hone, Kevin Keibai Wang, and a bunch of other paleontologists, especially like American and Chinese paleontologists in 2011. And the type species is Zing Tyrannosaurus magnus. And the genus name comes from the word Zhuxing, which refers to the type locality where it was found. And tyrant means tyrant for T-Rex. And its genus name means magnus, so it's the Great Zhuxing Tyrant in its full name, because it's quite a big animal. So it's actually only known from the holotype as a near-complete maxilla and left dentary, so we don't actually know too much about it. And it's currently housed in the Zhuxing Dinosaur Museum, with casts of it also being found other places. In terms of its dating, it's dated to the Campanian, so it's a little bit earlier than T-Rex and Tarbosaurus. And found in the Huachi group, so about 73 million years old. And there's another one that's been found that could be Zhuxing Tyrannosaurus, but also could be another Tyrannosaurid. So it's neither here nor there. And as part of Tyrannosaur material, there seems the animals that it would have lived with be like Sinoceratops, hadrosaurs like Shatungosaurus, and Kylosaurids like Tacosaurus and Secanosaurus, whatever lived with it. It lives in a floodplain, very rich habitat, and actually has one of the highest concentrations of dinosaur bones in the world, which is very interesting. So Zing Tyrannosaurus was very, very big, and the estimated size has been very similar to Tarbosaurus in size, which is about 11 meters and about 5 tons. And the holotype's dentary is actually significantly smaller than the bones in Sioux, which is one of the larger Tyrannosaur specimens known. But still quite a big animal, definitely very, very cool. And Zing Tyrannosaurus can also be distinguished from other Tyrannosaurids by some anthropomorphies, and some have actually made arguments that this is just Tarbosaurus, but we're just going to go, as it's described as a new one, it's just a new species now. So there's actually possibly a few isolated teeth of these dinosaurs that could be, previously given the name Tyrannosaurus Mongoliensis, but then it was actually put as Zing Tyrannosaurus. So phylogenetic analysis actually compared to these guys and found them in Tyrannosaurini. So these guys are the clade that includes, or an early relative of Tacosaurus and Tyrannosaurus, which are the later Maastrichtian ones, which is Tyrannosaurus in North America, Tacosaurus in Asia. So these guys would have lived in Asia as well, the Zing Tyrannosaurus, and would have been their early relative, and then would have split on to be Tacosaurus and Tyrannosaurus. So yeah, another really cool one. And a really awesome mod too. Definitely a big fan. Let it walk off and do your thing. I know a lot of people will kind of like Harshwell Trees looks a little bit weird. I think it's mainly just because he went for a more accurate size. This is more consistent with what Jurassic Park looks like and more consistent with that art style. But yeah, really, really awesome. Definitely a big fan of this mod. So we're going to let you run off and do your thing. So yeah, that was done by Trippy28. Really great job for everyone. Everyone did a really great job with their mods. So especially Fat Uncle Clyde Keen actually did a great job with as well as his first mods. Also, Net Raptor coming back, Michael Productions bringing that Cukus. All very, very good job. So yeah, I really, really, really hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Hope you guys like and subscribe. Always remember to hit the little bell icon to get notified below anything. So yeah, if you guys enjoyed this video, hope you guys like and subscribe, and bye-bye.